This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, sci-fi, and thriller film called These Final Hours. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. As an asteroid plummets into Earth's atmosphere, several people call their loved ones to say their farewells. After an intimate time with his lover, James drives back to town while listening to the radio stations with different reactions to their impending doom. The asteroid has hit the North Atlantic Ocean, and in 12 hours, the firestorm that it produces will reach Australia. To cope with their final hours, a group of people reads the Bible, while others choose to end their lives in their own terms. Chaos is also in the streets as people unleash their inhibitions during the final moments. James drinks as he remembers his previous conversation with Zoe, who invited him to stay in her beach house until it happens. James chose to leave and indulge in alcohol to numb himself from the fear and pain. Suddenly, James comes upon a blockade of shopping carts. A man enters his vehicle and threatens him with a machete. The man orders him to drive as he rants about being betrayed. Finally, they come upon the man who betrayed him, so the deranged man steals the car keys and threatens James to stay. But when James watches the madman hack someone to death, he runs. The man chases him across the neighborhood until James hides under a van. He muffles his breathing until the crazed man finds someone else to chase. Once the coast is clear, James pulls out a nail that stabbed him during his escape and tries to open the van. He ducks his head when he spots a red van parking nearby. From the red van, two drunk men carry a young girl who's screaming for help. Once they're inside the house, James quietly makes it to the red van, still hearing the girl's cries for help. He gets in the van and finds the keys but hesitates in driving away as he hears the men yelling at the girl. Torn by guilt, James picks up a hammer from the van and enters the house. James quietly searches the house until he finds the door where the girl is locked in. Suddenly, one of the men races to him, so James swings his hammer across his head. The other man strangles him from behind, so James hits him on the side. The man releases James but picks up a lamp and hits him. The larger man pins James on the floor, choking him with the lamp until James bites his finger. James reaches for his hammer, but the man negotiates to share the girl with him. Uninterested, James slams the hammer on his head. James breaks the locks on the door and assures the girl that he's there to help. He carries her outside, but she's too scared to get in the red van. She insists that she wants her father, but James yells that it's not safe to be out in the open, convincing her to get in the van. During the drive, the girl recounts how the drunk man tricked her by promising her to find her father. She then shares what her father looks like and that he was looking for petrol when they got separated. The girl mentions that her father burned down their house so that no one else could break in and live there. They were supposed to go to her aunt's house, where the rest of the family should be. Seeing that the van is nearly out of fuel, James contemplates what to do with the girl. 2 hours later, James listens to the radio, reporting that Central America, Mexico, and Canada are already gone. They found her father's car, so the girl honks the car while calling her father. James convinces her that her father isn't around, so she suggests heading to her aunt's to meet with him. James refuses because her aunt's house is too far, so he suggests taking her to his sister's house instead. The girl insists that she needs to be with her father when it happens, so James gets on the van alone. When he starts the car, the girl is left with no choice but to ride with him. Finally, the girl introduces herself as Rose. They reach his sister's house, but no one answers the door. James enters from the back door and sees Christmas ornaments, family albums, and bottles of liquor inside. He hears water running upstairs and tells Rose to swim in the pool to spare her from what he'd find. He reaches the master bedroom, where his sisters and her husband's bodies are in the shower. Unable to cope, James raids the liquor cabinet and drinks. Then, he watches Rose swimming from the balcony and notices his niece's new graves in the playground. He hurries into the garage to take his sister's car, but Rose finds him before he can leave. With no choice, he lets her in, and he reveals that he's heading to a big party. Rose suggests that someone else at the party may take her to her aunt's house. Earlier at the beach house, as James was getting ready to leave, Zoe started crying and revealed that she was pregnant with James's baby. James was distraught, given that it was the end of the world. Zoe still pondered over the possibilities of their baby, but James got angry at her for telling him since it no longer matters. James insisted that he didn't want to feel anything when it happens. Rose notices James' bleeding arm during the ride, so she offers him her socks to bandage the wound. While bandaging his wound, Rose reveals that she believes she might go to hell because she once prayed for a bully in her school to die. The bully soon got leukemia and died. James assures her that it wasn't her fault since bad things just happen. Suddenly, a family riding a police car pulls up at the library behind them. James takes Rose inside to ask the parents to take Rose in, but the mother insists on them getting out while her husband is frozen in shock while holding a gun. Realizing what the parents were about to do, James pulls Rose away. The husband stops James and explains that he couldn't watch his kids suffer in waiting. He then asks James to shoot his children instead because he can't do it, assuring him that the kids won't feel anything. When James refuses, the husband begs James to say he forgives him for what he'll do. James then leaves with Rose, leaving the family to their fates. Soon they reach the party, and Rose holds his hand nervously. Inside, a crowd of people goes wild while drinking, dancing, and pleasure. A group of men cheers as others play Russian roulette. James desperately shields Rose as the scenes frighten her. Finally, James reunites with his friend Freddie, who's hosting the party. James looks for his girlfriend and Freddie's sister, Vicky, but Freddie teases him about something they've been working on that's already finished before he leaves. The two head inside, where Rose witnesses more sensitive activities. He distracts her with a bowl of chips while he searches for Vicky. Suddenly, a woman claims that Rose is her daughter, so James defends her from the woman. Finally, James finds Vicky, who quickly dismisses Rose to spend intimate time with her boyfriend. James hesitates in leaving Rose, but ends up following Vicky anyway, and leaves Rose by the pool. In a bedroom, the couple sniffs some powder before getting intimate. However, James is distracted, disappointing Vicky. James finally mourns how his sister and her family are already dead. Still, Vicky remains indifferent, stressing that none of it matters anymore. Witnessing his own reaction to Zoe earlier, James starts to feel guilty. To cheer him up, Vicky takes him to the basement. Meanwhile, Rose swims in the pool when the woman who thinks she's her daughter finds her. The woman corners her and offers her a pill to relax. Scared, Rose bargains that she'll take the pill if the woman promises to take her to her aunt's place. Below the basement, Vicky reveals that Freddie finished the underground bunker with enough supplies to last them a year. James isn't impressed and points out that they need the bunker to be a lot deeper underground to survive the firestorm. Outside, Rose feels the effects of the medicine and becomes entranced by the confetti and party. However, she begins to hallucinate. Back at the bunker, Vicky realizes that James went to see Zoe, ridiculing him for going to her instead of his family, finally revealing how scared she is of dying. James holds and comforts her, but she starts to beg for intimacy again. James stops her and confesses that he went back to the party because he didn't know what to do, but now he realizes that he couldn't black out the pain. Instead, he wants to take Rose back to her family, where she belongs. When Vicky asks him where he belongs, James simply states that he doesn't belong there with her. Freddie finds them and notices that Vicky is crying. He questions James why his sister is crying, and James nags him for filling Vicky's head with lies about survival, then leaves. Vicky mentions to Freddie that James claimed that the bunker wouldn't work, so Freddie follows James, screaming in anger. Outside, James finds Rose vomiting. He pulls the crazed woman away from her, who still insists that Rose is her daughter. Freddie steps out and aims a gun at James from spoiling their fun. The woman convinces Freddie that Rose is her daughter, so Freddie threatens James into giving the girl back. James continues to push the woman away, and Vicky walks in. She takes the gun from Freddie's hands and aims it at James, but instead of him, she shoots the crazed woman. The party people get startled by the gunshot, but move on quickly. Vicky tells James to go, so he heads out, but finds their van is caught between more cars. He carries a barely conscious Rose into a tunnel and gets her to drink some water. Soon, they hear a man singing drunkenly near a cab. James steals the car and drives off. James takes Rose to his mother's house, where they change Rose's clothes and help her through her fever. James's mother scolds him for claiming he'll never come back to her, yet he still did. James argues that he planned on dropping by and that he didn't plan on having to care for Rose. Later, his mother asks about his sister, but James lies that he didn't see her. His mother recounts how she visited her yesterday, but no one answered the door. She calls her daughter selfish for keeping her grandkids away and blames her son-in-law. Not wanting his mother to think of his sister that way, James ends up lying that his sister and her family went away. He then asks for his mother's car, but she laughs at his sad attempt to help the girl. James argues that her inability to understand his desire to help Rose is not his problem. Finally, James's mother reveals that her car has been stolen. Despite their arguments, the two share a laugh at how alike they are. His mother then tells him to search for gas cans in the tool shed. James asks his mother what she plans to do before it happens. She just intends to finish her puzzles until the world ends. Finally, Rose recovers and James returns her to the cab. He then goes to say goodbye to his mother. She tells him that she's happy to see what he's doing for Rose. They hold hands until his mother urges him to go. James wishes her good luck with her puzzles before tearfully walking away. During the drive, Rose apologizes to James for getting tricked by a woman at the party. James waves off her concerns, stressing that her father shouldn't see her upset when they reunite. He encourages Rose that she's tough and he gets her to smile. Soon, they reach Rose's aunt's house, where jazz music is playing loudly. Rose excitedly runs to the house, calling for her father and family. Inside, however, they find the house empty. After searching the house, Rose wonders if her family is at the pond nearby, so she goes there. Meanwhile, James heads to the woods in the opposite direction. where he finds bodies of Rose's family, including her father. James stops Rose from discovering her family and regretfully tells her that they're all dead. Rose fights to see her father, so James carries her away. When he puts her down, she still insists on seeing her father to ensure that it's him, hoping to spare her any more grief. James carries her father's body out. Once she confirms that it's him, Rose grieves. James ushers her to leave, but she refuses, insisting that her father promised they'd be together when it happens. James and Rose take her father's body near the pond, where she decorates his body with flowers. James gives her the photograph of her family that she found in her father's body. He confesses that he could have been a father, since he got another woman pregnant. When Rose asks if the pregnant girl is prettier than Vicky, he agrees. He admits that he messed up when he left Zoe alone. Rose looks at the sky and assures James that there's still time to go back. The two share a hug and say their farewells before James walks away. James drives off, and Rose playfully chases after the car so they can see each other until the very last moment. Once she's out of sight, James quietly weeps in the car. With only minutes before the firestorm hits, James speeds his way back to the beach. However, the car overheats, so he runs the rest of the way under the scorching heat. When he gets there, he finds Zoe's house empty. James runs to the beach and finds Zoe watching the fiery storm looming closer. James reunites with Zoe, but she pushes him away in anger for leaving her alone. He begs her forgiveness and confesses his love for her. Zoe accepts his embrace and tells him she loves him too. The two share a kiss and hold each other as embers reach them. The entire beach turns red, but they keep their eyes on the storm. Zoe says that the storm is beautiful before they're engulfed in its flames.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.